Good afternoon, fellow radio hams and people who are interested in interesting things, gentlemen and ladies alike. Where are we heading today? Right, we're going to do a spin today down to what I think is one of the most famous radio sites in Scotland. And please feel free to leave a comment. Whether you'll get an answer or not is another thing, but in my opinion, this is the most famous site in Scotland for radio. Right on the west coast of Scotland, right on the peninsula of the Mull of Kintyre. So here we go. It's a bit rough and ready, and it's just coming into view now. Doesn't look too much now, but back in the day, 1900, 1901, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, it was a very famous site. So we'll just hook up the vehicle. Apart from it being an absolutely stunning, beautiful view from here, straight across the Atlantic. Looking down to the left, northern tip of Ireland. A little bit further round you can see the Mull of Kintyre. Back round and looking straight out across the Atlantic. Come here many times to do small activations, small portable station and so forth. An absolutely stunning view straight across the Atlantic. Be looking at the northern coast of Newfoundland, quite a few thousand miles away. So without further ado, as seems to be the terminology used in making one of these videos, obviously I'm a bit of a novice at this, so we'll push on. But today it'll be something to do with ham radio, and I've still got the old trusty 897 sitting there, and we might give a shout on that later. So let's head off, see what we've got. On a beautiful day tomorrow, the weather is meant to turn drastically, and we've got a forecast up to 70 and 80 mile an hour winds here in Kintyre. Today it's absolutely stunning. If I spoke to you in the radio before, you'll know the weather's usually pretty grim around the west coast. We've had no summer at all, but here today, just a stunning day. There's the old Ampro. I've had many mobile whips. I won't use anything else. It's as good as anything I've used, apart from maybe on 10 metres with a 9-foot whip, which works pretty well. Give you a quick look. Pretty hastened together choke, just to stop a bit of RF coming into the pickup, but works exceptionally well. 40 watts, and I've worked all over the world on it. So okay, we'll head over to the site. I'm not an expert. You'll get most of the information on, there's lots of different YouTube channels and there's things on the internet and so forth about the site. But it's Fessenden site, however you wish to pronounce it. And this is where there was a huge antenna erected in 1900, 1901, 1902. And this is the foundations of that site that are still here. Mr. Fessenden, who worked for Mr. Marconi back in the day. But Mr. Marconi did not take Mr. Fessenden's advice on different pieces of equipment and so forth that you can also read about. Which was a great mistake. So as far as radio is concerned, Mr. Fessenden is the man, not Mr. Marconi. And on this site here at RAF, well, I was going to say RAF Machrihanish, I was there the other day, down at Machrihanish, past the little village. This is the foundation where the first transmission that you could actually get speech across the Atlantic. And that would be an AM transmission using an AC generator. There was spark transmitters at this particular time. As I say, it's back in the foundations of radio. But you can see here on the foundation, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can find out all the information about Mr. Reginald Fessenden, a Canadian gentleman of great repute. And typically one of these guys that was just the founders of radio. As I say, worked with Marconi, but Marconi wasn't interested in some of his ideas as a young guy. Marconi went his own road and Mr. Fessenden went his road. and Mr. Fessenden's road was much better. Huge amount of patents to his name about radio and all different communications. But just to give you a quick idea, the generator seat was here. You can still see the foundation of where the big AC generator sat. Here's the well. They dug a well for water because, of course, it was a steam generator that ran the equipment. And the steam generator was mounted here. There's some pictures on the internet if you have a look. Here is where they kept the coal, different bits and pieces. I've dug old bottles and things out of here, mainly beer bottles. The lads liked a beer. But on this particular site, say this is the actual transmission room and so forth, where the transmission was made, across to Bryant Rock, Massachusetts, where there was the exact same site built with the exact same antenna, and the transmissions were picked up there one Christmas. And it's all really interesting. I think in YouTube they actually made a little film about it. So you've got the actual location here, and the antenna would be mounted here, and a massive antenna. It was 450 foot high, one of the tallest structures in Europe at the time. Built, believe it or not, by the engineers who built the Empire State Building. At great expense, may I say, back in the day. So you can see how heavy duty the foundation is there. And a really interesting setup. 450 foot constructed tower. There's pictures on the internet, you can see it, with huge guy wires running out. Now if we look at the base section here, this is actually turned upside down, and you can see in place here there's still the insulators, ceramic insulators that were right round the whole of the base. You can see it was a reinforced concrete structure. Now this has been turned upside down over the years, but you can see where the ceramic insulators lay, and they were laid on top of the other surface, so the tower was completely insulated from ground. Remembering, of course, back in these days they weren't sure what the ground did. It was all trial and error. You can see the fixing mounts here, and there would be other insulators on this panel here. This one will be flipped up and onto the top. And above that, on this panel, there was these. Now you can see the construction here and how big they are, how heavy duty they are. Now these would be on the other side, and you can see a cup shape on these two sections here. And that cup shape was they used at the bottom of the tower, believed to be a big concrete ball that sat in that structure, and then the tower section was sat on top of that, and that allowed movement on the whole structure with the guys. That allowed the structure to actually move back and forward to take up the sway of the wind, because we get some pretty heavy winds here. As I said earlier on, we're forecast 70 miles an hour tomorrow, so that's going to be interesting. So if you can imagine a big ball sitting in there, on the other side of that, sitting on there, and then a 450 foot structure heading up into the air with huge guy supports. Now to give you an idea, you can see the pickup in the distance there, and across from the pickup, you can just see it there. I'll try and zoom in. As I say, it's very amateur, I'm just losing the phone. And that's one of the structures for the stage to go on. And you can see the distance it is. Now there's 4 stays built. Each went round about 20 tons of reinforced concrete. We'll just go over and have a look. As you can see, what a takeoff to get across the Atlantic. And this transmission was made to here in the Mull of Kintyre from Bryant Rock in Massachusetts. The first AM voice transmission across the Atlantic. Mr. Marconi had his Morse code, but that came to Ireland, of course, not the mainland of the UK. Although Northern Ireland is not very far away. But as far as actual area is concerned, where the transmission came, when the first transmission, voice transmission, was here to Machrihanish, sorry. So there's one of the structures. Pretty big old lump of concrete. Had a bit of artwork over the years. Somebody's had a small campfire there. So we'll just go up and have a look. Give you an idea, standing beside the earth, give you an idea how big it is and what 20 odd tons, maybe more, of reinforced concrete looks like. So we'll head up here, up the top. So, up the top of the structure, and there we can see the metal inlays of the H-beams and so forth that was used to hold down the reinforced steel cables that held the antenna. Looking back over, see the pickup in the distance, and you can see the base of the antenna, and to the right the radio room. So quite a distance away, and there's 4 of these stretched here for the stays. A massive structure. So this was the inner stay, believe it or not, and we can nip across here, and just in the distance there you can see there's a fish farm down here, and there's a viewing point that you could go and watch rare seabirds and so forth that come in over there, if you're into ornithology, I think it is. So we'll just have a look here, and this is the outermost structure, one for the stays to come down. And again you'll see the similar with the inlaid steel that was cut away, I believe, for the war. First World War, they came and took all the steel away from here, and it was used in the war. But you can see the size of the structure here. You can see the size of the piece of concrete. That's my foot, and there's the structure. Again, you're probably looking at 20 tons or more. See a trig point sitting in the brow there. That gives you an idea. So there's 4 of these set in, so this was no small job. I'm afraid this wasn't just a quick portable with a SOTA beam or a spider beam set up. So there I was looking straight back at the inner guy, tensioning concrete stance, and then further on in the distance, if I can walk the phone, there we go. So that's back to the base section and back out. So it's a fair old distance. 450 feet takes a fair bit of guide, may I tell you. And it was made up of basically steel cylinders. Probably, I'm not exactly sure the exact dimensions of them, but you could probably fit inside them your shoulder. So they were pretty big, and they were stayed. So it's a beautiful day here to show you. I can give you a quick idea of where we are. There you go, looking across the top of the pretty unsightly fish farm, and that would be you looking up the entire coast, across RAF Machrihanish in the distance, looking across wind turbines, very ugly. One of the worst things that ever hit Kintyre, but there they are, that's the way, that's progress, that's what they call it anyway. And then further on down, and then looking up north, and on a good day we would see Isla away in the distance there up to the right, and of course back round and we're heading over towards Ireland. And the Atlantic straight across, so a great takeoff for Mr. Fessenden's transmissions. Right there, we're just walking along a bit. We'll show you some of the other points where the stays were anchored. Imagine huge steel ropes. Here's one of them here. Give you an idea of where we are. Pick up now over there, you can see the other stay point, and back looking at the antenna base. Then over there is the radio room. We'll just have a look back here, see what we've got. And as I was saying, that's the inner posts. We can look here at the outer stay position, which is a good, a good 100 yards or more away from the antenna base. So we're talking about big stays here. A 450-foot tower. The largest tower, the largest structure in Europe at the time in 1900. And then you can see the same design that they had. At the back here is where the cables would come down and be positioned. This was a square section, come up probably 5 or 6 feet off the ground, and the anchoring points for the cable coming in here. This cable was, as you'll see if you look on the internet, you'll see the idea of how it was built and constructed is fairly vague. There isn't too much about that, but the stays came down, and normally you would with steel rope it would be turned round in itself and then a bolt and a U-clamp put on to hold the stay. But they decided, for whatever reason or what it was done in that particular time, that when they positioned each stay, they would fix each stay by taking it through the steel structure, doubling it back in itself, but putting basically a solder joint. So they would put a large cup around the two cables and they would pour solder into it, molten solder, lead, and then once that cooled down, that would be the stay. It was held that way with all the stays. For that reason, we're not sure, but unfortunately, that didn't help, and it was part of the decline of when the antenna came down. And this structure, I think it was up for about a year. They did quite a few different transmissions. As I say, AM modulated transmissions were a voice transmission, not CW. And they were back and forward to Brock with, with the relay station. On the YouTube, I think there is a channel, if you put in Fessenden, Machrihanish, it comes up and it shows you a little film that they made. Unfortunately, it doesn't show you Machrihanish, but it shows you the Brant Rock, Red Rock side of things. And it's a kind of basic, but quite informative video of what happened on the actual day that the transmission was made. There was some music. Mr. Fessenden was a very religious gentleman, and he said a few words from the Bible as well. Very poignant, and it's not a bad view. It's well worth having a look at. This will give you an idea of where the actual place is they're talking about here in Machrihanish in Scotland. I mentioned the decline of the antenna. Well, there was a storm brewing as normal here on the coast, and the gentlemen had their equipment, everything set up, everything was running well, but there was quite a bit of a storm blowing. And seemingly in the evening, when they were doing a transmission, there was a crack heard, and one of the stays broke. Well, it didn't break, but I mentioned that the stays were held together with basically a big joint full of liquid lead compound, and one of these let way, and the stay slipped through the compound, and basically, and we've came across many times working on our old gear and new gear, a dry solder joint. Well, this was in a slightly bigger stage, and only one stay let go, and they believed it would be because when they filled the pots full of lead, that the salt air, the salt got in amongst the lead, the compound, and left basically air bubbles and so forth, and it didn't take properly to the steel wires, the ropes, and one of them let go in the storm. And you imagine 450 feet steel structure, just one stay went, and then it unstabilized the whole structure in the winds that on occasion are up over 100 knots here, so very, very windy indeed. And they let go, and the structure came tumbling down. All the other stays started to come through. The same thing they noted in the stays that luckily nobody was, as far as I know, nobody was injured, nobody was hurt. But you can actually see the ferocity of when this tower came down on the radio room floor here. As you will see, the whole floor is cracked through from one side to the other. And that is believed to have been where, that was a transmitter there, where the cables came to the transmitter. So when the structure fell, it pulled the cables and they ripped right through the foundation of the radio room. Luckily everybody got out. Of course the room itself would be it wasn't, I don't think it was brick built, it was just a wooden structure. So the cable ripped right through the floor, up through the foundation, which they were underneath, as you can see. And well, that was the end of it. The whole structure was taken apart and believed to be a huge ground plane system put under the ground here with steel ropes as well. A cage type system where they interlaced a lattice structure under the ground here. Similarly, the whole site was dug up with a local farmer, and they laid in a huge ground plane, an absolutely massive ground plane. Now, why Mr. Fessenden knew that a ground plane worked, of course, this was the foundations of radio, so nobody knew what a ground plane would do or why Mr. Fessenden put it there. But on his calculations, he worked out that the transmission would be better with a ground plane system. So, probably one of the first ground plane systems put in. They put the ground system in, and it obviously worked extremely well. Really, when you look at the view, if you watch the programme about it, or have a look on the internet and see what's described about the place, that the transmission really came about by accident. And I'm not going into the full details of that. There's too much to explain, and I'm not competent enough to explain it to you. But I think you'll find it really very, very interesting. So I think there was a spark gap transmitter here originally, and then that was changed. Mr. Fessenden said, no, we need an AC device. And there's a few bits of terminology that I can't quite remember here when I'm on site, but there was different idea for transmission for AM and so forth. But it was it's very interesting if you watch. First capacitors and different inductors and goodness knows what all that was used. And I can't just quite remember the name of the actual diode, the transmitter diode that was used, but it was very basic but did work. And the transmission was heard. So there we go, there's another stay a bit further out. I won't bother to go in, it's just the same. I think there's 4 altogether. There's either 3 or 4. I'll try and get a picture of the structure, but you'll see it when you look on the internet. It's very, very interesting. And I think I'm very lucky to stay here. And I've done 1 or 2 communications, and there was a special event here quite a number of years ago. GM3TNT was quite a famous call sign around it here. Poor Duncan is now silent key. But we did have the schools involved, and we came out here and we set up a radio. And we had single sideband contact with Red Rock. Now that was back in I think that was in the 90s. I can't remember exactly the date, but I think there's a few things on the internet about it as well. But it was a nice special event. We had a couple of cards made up, and I've still got a few of these. I think they'll be quite collector's item now. But they explain what happened here very well, and Duncan was very well versed with all the information. And one of the guys that got me interested in getting the license and so forth, back along, well, let's say a few years ago. But a very cool call sign, Duncan. Was an air traffic controller in Ayrshire for many years, retired back here to Campbelltown. And some of you might remember maybe getting a call from Duncan. Very apt on the radio, and a very good CW operator as well, which unfortunately I'm not, just enough to pass the exam. But something that I've always tried to learn, but a bit dyslexic, and you can probably tell that from the explanations I've given you from some of the videos I'm possibly going to stick on the YouTube. See if they make we'll disappear into the abyss if we don't get many views. So we'll have a go at it anyway. But just to give you an idea of where we are, and I've got lots of good calls from gentlemen all over the world into the call sign MM0GTX. So there you go, give it an idea of where we are. And if there's any question, I'll try to answer, but I'm no expert. You'll find all the relative information on YouTube. But it's a bit, got to try and put a few more videos on. And it will be a bit, yeah, the art of making dummy loads. I'm pretty good at that. Antennas is the thing. And I think Mr. Fessenden 100 years ago made a better job making antennas than I do now. Even with all the information. But some work and some don't. But I think that's the name of the game and the enjoyment for me anyway. So, from beautiful Machrihanish, normally 4 miles outside of Campbelltown, and just looking over the Atlantic at the moment. How lucky I consider myself here, and I can just come 4 miles and I'm down to this with absolutely no noise, and just that little hamstick in the back of the vehicle. But I've put up a few different antennas over the years down here in Hollywood, and had great fun back and forward speaking to people all over the world, of course. Okay, that's it. Another waffle, as normal. All the best. Well, back in the house, and I mentioned I would have a picture, and this is up in my wall, and this is a picture of the antenna. So there you've got an idea. Sorry, it's a bit of glare, the glass in front of the frame. But that's 450 feet. And I'll just come in a bit closer. And you can see the radio room tower there. You can see the chimney. You can see it was quite a place they built. And you can see over towards there was actually another hut on the other side that I think was just a wooden hut that did not have a foundation as such. But you can see it was quite a construction in its day. You can see the stays going down to the concrete plinths that we mentioned. It'll be over in that direction, the ones we had a look at. You can just see the concrete structure there that was holding them. So you can see a friend of mine, Russell, MM0KRC, enhanced the picture and highlighted the stays because you couldn't see them in the original picture. So you can see the way the stays worked and came down, and you can see the cylindrical, sections going up, and then the stays coming off. And at the very top, if you look, well, there's another thing Mr. Fessenden added onto his antenna, a capacitance hat. Now, how did he know how and why to do that? But he did, and that's capacitance hat. And obviously the frequency that we used was very, very low frequency. So that was the 450 feet plus a capacitance hat. So I'm not sure the exact kilohertz, but I think it's on the internet. You can have a look and see how low the frequency was, but pretty low. And as I say, my friend Russell, he enhanced the picture as best he could, and that's it. So I don't think there is many pictures of the structure. I think this is basically the only one, but at least we have it, and that's the main thing. I've got it taken up, and it's just a nice thing to have in the house, as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. There's a picture of it. You'll see it on the internet. But that was the structure we had to look at this afternoon.